I think one of the things we really need to all do internationally and in the US is we need to really think seriously about what we can learn from Afghan feminists. That the women in RAWA, which is the Revolutionary Association of Afghan Women, or the RAWA, right? They've been thinking about what a new government in Afghanistan might be like. They're trying to think about what it means to have a secular state, which allows for freedom of religion, but is secular in its use of state authority. They've been trying to think about how women's literacy is crucial to democracy, how women's health care is absolutely essential for women being able to live the life of full citizenship. And I try a lot, I mean, I'm not an expert on Afghanistan, but I've been trying a lot to listen wherever I can to the expressions of Afghan women, many of whom are in exile, but some of whom are working underground in the refugee camps in Pakistan and still in Afghanistan itself. But here's the caveat, and it's a really important caveat I think that we all need to take on board. One of the things we've learned from feminists in other countries is that sometimes the militarizers, who can be the media or the intellectual elite or government officials, sometimes the militarizers will adopt, in the worst sense, not the best sense, will adopt women's rights to justify their militarized response. And we can see that happening in the United States. That is, that our government and the media and intellectuals and even people who tell jokes, all the jokes about bin Laden coming back as a woman, right, as if that's the ultimate revenge. And everyone who tells those jokes, they've all of a sudden take on board that the conditions of Afghan women are important. They're important to joke about, they're important to use in formal speeches, they're important to make asides to or to show images of in the nightly news, as if all of a sudden Afghan women's condition is something we all care about. And that makes me very nervous because I think it's being used to justify our military response without ever asking any of the Afghan feminists actually what they think. And that's the militarization of women's rights. To use women's alleged, benighted, deprived situation in one country to make us feel more civilized and therefore more justified in taking whatever actions we come up with in the name of their liberation. Whereas what feminists have taught us, and this is now over the last 150 years, at least since the 1850s, is that if one really cares about women's rights in another community, in another ethnic group, or in another country, then the first thing you do because you care is you start listening and you start affecting your own behavior by what you hear from those women because they're smart. To be deprived of rights doesn't mean you're foolish or uneducated. To be deprived of rights means just that, you're deprived of rights. So the first thing that needs to happen, if anyone says they care about Afghan women's condition, is make sure that they're part of the rebuilding of Afghanistan. And second of all, stop the bombing immediately until you ask those women whether they thought bombing was the best way to improve their conditions in the world.